let's fly away, let's get away. Come fly with me, let's float down to Peru. In Llama Land, there's a one-man band, and a toot, he's flute for you.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Gold Medal Moments podcast. I want to thank you all for joining me today. My name's Toby Shaver, and you might be asking yourself, what is the Gold Medal Moments podcast all about? Well, it's about you. It's about your barbershop heroes. It's about the guy next to you on the risers every Tuesday. It's about the guy standing in front of you, waving his arms while you're on the risers. It's about their barbershop story, and it's about your barbershop story. Podcast was inspired by a keynote speech at Harmony University that a lot of you have probably seen or heard, given by Dr. Jim Henry, where he spoke very passionately about how we as barbershoppers all have opportunities to give and receive little gold medals every day and really have the ability to change lives through barbershop. So this podcast will feature conversations with barbershoppers from all walks of life about just how barbershop has changed their lives. Who am I? Well, I'm a lot like you. I've been singing barbershop for over 20 years, and it has without a doubt changed my life for the better. And I hope you'll all be a part of the show by joining in the conversation on Facebook and Twitter and at goldmedalmoments.com, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But for now, let's get right into our first gold medal moment. All right, I am honored to introduce our very first guest on the Gold Medal Moments podcast, Mr. John Newell. John sang lead with the 2005 International Champion Quartet Realtime, one of my personal favorites, and with over 35 years of singing experience, John is a sought-after coach and vocal instructor and the author of the book, Let It Out, Train Your Voice to Be Free, Free Your Voice to Be Trained. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Toby. Good to be here.
Now, John, the Gold Medal Moments podcast is about your barbershop story, but let's first take it back to the early years. Tell us about how music in general first became part of your life.
In a church choir, actually, when I was just a child. My father has always been a clergyman since before I was born, and he was the priest for our Anglican, or Episcopal, if you like, the priest for our parish, but he also ran the choir for our parish, and I had two older brothers who joined the choir in the church, and I wanted to be like my two older brothers, so I joined in, and Dad would direct as well as being in charge of the parish. So I did years of that, and I ended up singing in sort of church choirs of the English cathedral tradition. Since I was 6, right through into my 30s.
And with that kind of background, that kind of start in music, how did you first find barbershop?
Well, that was another area of music that got me into barbershop. I was in grade 12 and I was doing the school musical, and one of the teachers involved, the musical director, she said to me, look, I know of a group of guys a quartet who are looking for somebody of your voice range. Would you be interested? Could I put your name forward to them? I said, oh, sure, why not? Let's give it a shot. So a couple of weeks later, I got a call from the baritone of the quartet inviting me to come audition, see what it would be like, see if my voice would fit, and see if it was the kind of music I would like to sing. So I got there with the guys, sang with them. They said straight away, please join us as the lead. And that quartet was called Close Shave. That was 1987. I sang with Close Shave for 9 years. And thoroughly enjoyed every part of it. And the baritone himself is still singing in the quartet. He is still the only original member of the group, and we're still great friends to this day.
And what was it when you first started singing with those guys, after coming from a choral background, what was it about barbershop that first got you hooked?
It was definitely the sound of putting some harmonies together and the unique sound that was made through barbershop. I got to say, back then, we knew nothing about the barbershop style whatsoever. We were the only barbershop thing in the city where I lived. There wasn't a chorus. I didn't even know choruses existed back then. So I was attracted to the sound. I was also attracted because I could see immediately through the music that I could do some of the things that I loved to do, which was be on stage, sing some music that had some challenge to it, and also deliver a story or a character to an audience, which ended up being a major part of my life as I studied drama at university and did a whole bunch of musical theatre in my early 20s. So it just seemed to combine all the things that I love to do while challenging me with the music at the same time.
And what were, back in those days, what were some of the quartets or choruses that inspired you that you were listening to?
It took me a while for me to actually recognize some of the quartets from around the world. I was completely on the other side of the world. At the time, I was living in the state of Tasmania in Australia. And, this was pre-internet and all that kind of stuff. So any exposure I got to groups at that point was pretty much through recordings. And honestly, I cannot remember the name of any quartet I listened to in that first few years. And that's no disrespect to any of them, but I just didn't understand the sort of barbershop culture that was out there because I was so isolated from it. But, we didn't have our first Australian convention until 1991, which was 4 years after I'd started singing in the quartet. And that was a huge learning experience. That was my first exposure to any international champion quartet in person, and that was the Ritz. They had just won international and then came to Australia to be guests at our first ever convention. And that convention was a huge learning curve. I have to admit, probably the most influential quartet, though, and this would be no surprise to many people, is the Gas House Gang. I first came across the Gas House Gang on a video of the 93 International Convention, the year that they won. Was entranced by their sound as well as their performance, and they were a hugely influential group. I was lucky enough to meet them 4 years later when they came to Australia, and they really did have a very strong impact on me. So it's kind of tying it up in a nice little bow that you want to call this gold medal moments when, there was Jim Henry singing with the Gas House Gang.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting to talk to you about kind of how things were in barbershop back then, because obviously with the internet connecting us all so well now, the affiliate organizations, all the, for those that don't know, these would be the barbershop organizations outside of North America and outside of the actual Barbershop Harmony Society. Back then, as you said, it was very isolated. You didn't have necessarily access to the events and different groups that were out there. And, now, of course, these days we have, our first affiliate quartet champion with Ringmasters. But but you, correct me if I'm wrong, you were actually you hold the distinction of being the first affiliate member gold medalist in a quartet, at least as an individual, correct?
I suppose you could put it that way, although when we won in 2005, I was not a member of the Australian Association of Men Barbershop Singers, AMS, as it was called at the time. I moved to Vancouver in late 2002, and so when we won, yes, I was officially part of the Barbershop Harmony Society and a member of the Greater Vancouver chapter. But I suppose you could say that I was the first, foreign-born, foreign-trained import into North America to be part of a gold medalist group, and it was a tremendous honour. Maybe it was just that I was the first guy with a really strange accent to everybody to win a gold medal.
Well, we'll call it close enough on a technicality, close enough to get you to be an answer of a Jeopardy question. So good.
Well, put it this way: the quartet had three guys living in Vancouver, and Tim Brosma, the tenor. He lives in Lyndon in Washington, which is right on the border between Washington State and British Columbia. So from my house to his house is barely 1 hour's drive. So we were really fortunate that we could all get together once a week and rehearse as a quartet.
Now, since we were moving into talking about Realtime, you had already won a couple quartet championships in Australia with your quartet Southern Cross. Yep. But most of our listeners are going to know you from Realtime. How did you get hooked up with those guys? I
credit my wife, the lovely Corrine. She I met her, that's why I moved over here in the first place. I met her in August of 2002, thanks to a very long story of connections through barbershop friends. And she herself is a barbershopper, has sung many years in the front row of Lionsgate Chorus. So I met her, and we realized that we had something very special. We realized that it was a very special connection that we had, and we wanted to explore it further. So I went back to Australia and organised my affairs so that I could come over to Vancouver, which I'd never been to before, come over to Vancouver and explore what life would be like with Corinne. I could always head back, and my boss back in Australia was great, said, you can always come back and pick up your old job where you left off. So that was a really wonderful thing. So I came over to Vancouver, explored life with Corinne. But before I left, I was talking to her on the phone, and she was saying, look, I know these three guys. And she was talking about Tom and Mark Metzger and Tim Brosman. And she said, you really should sing with them. Because she'd heard me sing. We'd been at a barbershop event. She said, you should sing with them. It'd be really good. Then when we first got the four of us all together just for a casual little sing after a chorus rehearsal, we just found some song that we vaguely knew in common, sang that, and then later that night, as we were going home, Corinne said to me, you guys are going to win International. And she said it in that matter-of-fact way. It wasn't that overexcited fangirl, oh my God, you're going to win. You know, it wasn't like that at all. She just said, you guys are going to win International. So she's the reason why I'm here. She's the reason why I met the guys. And she's an incredibly smart lady. And she predicted just about everything that would happen.
Now, tell me, not just on the stage as far as quartets that inspired you, but who are some of your barbershop heroes?
You can name plenty of them for all kinds of different reasons. I mean, you just name any of the big barbershop heroes and they'll be heroes of mine, whether it be all the guys of the Gas House Gang. Rich Knight was my first model, I suppose, of how to be a lead. And a couple of years ago, I got to stand on the stage with the AIC chorus, and I was standing right next to Rich. And, oh, gosh, that felt so humbling to be standing there next to the guy thinking, wow, all those years ago, he was inspiring me. But if you look at all the great ones, you know, Tony DeRosa, talk about virtuoso singer who can do anything. Same with Jeff Oxley, because if you compare his singing from when he won with the Rapscallions and the Acoustics through to when Max Q won, you know, he's almost like a different voice. And, of course, he can do all the advertising jingles with so many different voices. I mean, another extraordinary musician. So I've mentioned those guys. I've been inspired by so many who've just been friends, as well as those who've inspired by music. And if you ask me to name them all, I'm going to keep on naming more guys and end up forgetting a whole bunch of people who feel left out.
All right, well, I'll let you off the hook there then. But now we've alluded to, the Gas House Gang and Jim Henry earlier as far as his keynote speech that he gave at Harmony University, which is kind of the inspiration, for this podcast and for sure for the title of it. And, in that speech, he talked about the little gold medals that we as barbershoppers are able to give and receive every day, not just to each other, but out in the world. Tell us, John, a little bit about how barbershop has changed your life.
It's an amazing thing. When we came on the scene as Realtime, nobody knew who we were. And speaking fairly modestly, we made a reasonable impression in our first international contest in 2004, and we were very honoured that people came and talked excitedly to us and about us. It made me a better singer. It tuned my ear in a big way. I became much better at tuning. I became better at sight reading, and I developed friendships that I have to this day and will keep for the rest of my life. It was one of the hardest things, because you want to talk about gold medal moments, one of the best things is when we would do a show and audience members would come up and talk to us afterwards and just be so effusive and thankful for our music. At the time, it was kind of a whirlwind and a little confusing, because I was thinking to myself, gee, this is wonderful that these people feel so moved by the music. But really, all we're doing is singing songs. That's when you break it down. We're not curing cancer. We're not saving the world or bringing about world peace. We're just singing songs. And yet people feel this profound connection with the music and the personalities. And that goes back to then when we started as we were nobodies. And then suddenly we won and people wanted a piece of us or suddenly started paying attention. And it was a little difficult to deal with at first. So I was trying really strongly just to remember, hey, we're just singing songs, just be true to what we did and how we got into it. And try to remember that, hey, how I started. I started humbly, learning from scratch. I became a better singer. I learned to tune better. I learned to sight read better. And I developed great friendships. And I suppose those have been the most fundamental foundations for me as a barbershopper, and to keep those things in mind no matter what happens. How did barbershop change my life? Well, for example, I'm living on the other side of the world now. I lived 32 years in Australia, born and bred, and now I'm on the other side of the world, married to a Canadian with 3 Canadian children and with an international championship to my name. So, only a few years before if you went back to the middle of 2002 to about June or July, if somebody said to me, hey, look, in just over 3 years, you're going to be living in Canada and you're going to be part of an international champion quartet, I would have laughed in their face. So barbershop can certainly change your life in strange ways, in ways you don't expect, and I'll always be grateful for it.
All right, now tell me, John, what quartet or quartets or choruses are you excited about right now? The quartets that are, in it to win it this year. Who do you like right now?
You're talking about in contest?
Yeah, or outside of contest as well.
Well, as I see it at the moment in the world of active quartets, there is vocal spectrum head and shoulders above all others, and you've got ringmasters who are also a good distance ahead of all others. And that's no offense to all the other quartets out there, because they're all awesome. But if you want the best of the best, then those two of the current quartets are it. At the contest this year, it's going to be fun. I'm really excited to see what Musical Island boys are going to bring, because they're always exciting and they're such wonderful guys. They really are. I'm very excited to see what Forefront is going to bring, because there's a lot of talk about them, and there's certainly the goods there to do some really, really great music and to move the audiences spectacularly. Of course, I'm going to be rooting for Men in Black, because I've been coaching them on and off for the last few years, and they're my good friends, so they're going to be back in the contest, and I'll see if they can do better than they've done before. Who else is in the contest this year? I'm really interested to see what the Crush is going to come up with. Main Street is always amusing. A Mighty Wind is always exciting. You name them, I just keep naming them. I'll say, oh, yeah, these guys are going to be good. In the chorus contest, well, we get the vocal majority coming up against the Masters of Harmony. And then you've got the 2 choruses that really excite me, though, are Kentucky Vocal Union and 08. Both those choruses are truly spectacular, and both led in spectacular fashion. I love the model of sound that they use. I love the music that they bring. It's going to be some exciting stuff. Can't wait to hear some more of Westminster if they're going to be in Vegas. I certainly can't wait to hear Northern Lights do their swan song. It was so cool to be in Toronto and just cheer like crazy for Northern Lights to win their first gold. It was a very special moment.
Now, John, you mentioned coaching, so that leads us into your book. I mentioned it in the intro, your book, Let It Out. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, it has about 191 pages, and it's shaped in a rectangle,
Fascinating.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's a book not just designed for barbershoppers. And anyone listening, I'd hope you'd spread the word to all singers out there, because it is about my philosophy of singing and vocal production, that you need to get yourself out of the way in order to release your best voice and to release your truest emotions. And for those of us who've been involved in singing for years, we all develop certain habits, some good, some not so good. And it's about becoming aware of the habits that get in our way, especially muscle habits, and offering some approaches and thought patterns to help remove those patterns, to help remove those habits, to reveal a singer's best voice. Because it's not as muscular to sing well as we think. My purpose is, if I can inspire one person to sing more freely, which is how I was taught to sing and has been so central to my level of success, then that's a great thing, to inspire just one person to do that. It was also just a thing I wanted to do. After we had our second pregnancy was twins, so we went from 1 to 3 children. That's why I retired from the quartet. We had 3 children under the age of 3, and my time was completely devoted to working and to my family. And so being able to sing just wasn't possible. I wasn't able to dedicate the time and energy to it. And during that time, though, at least my mind was active about some of the things I'd learned over the recent years about singing and being part of an ensemble. And I thought to myself, well, at some point I'm going to be coaching people, so I should write some of these ideas down to remind me later, especially when we had twin babies and we were just completely out of it mentally. So then from that became the idea, well, maybe I should write it down as a book. Maybe it's not going to sell anything, but at least I can say I wrote it. So over a 5-year period, I just had a Word document sitting on the computer, and I regularly would just add a thought to that document as that thought came to me. And eventually it ended up being 20 pages of bullet points, just notes and nothing else. And from there, the book was born. It was sorted into, each point was sort of sorted into different categories, which became chapters. And eventually I reached the point where I had a book organized in chapters, but each chapter was made up of notes. So then I had to really knuckle down and just turn each chapter into actual prose and go through the process of self-publishing. So for anyone who's interested in getting it, I'm self-published. It's not put out by a publishing firm, which means I've had to do all the marketing myself, and will have to continue doing the marketing myself. But I've had lots of positive comments about it, which I'm very, very grateful to receive. It was a very satisfying moment to actually see the printed version in front of me for the first time and think, wow, I actually managed to write these ideas down.
Yeah, that must have been cool to actually get a physical book in your hands that you created.
And it became more real at that point.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're definitely going to have all the information and all the links for our listeners to check that out and get a copy of their own in the show notes, so we'll direct them in the right direction there. And John, I can't thank you enough for being part of the show today. Now, if our listeners want to reach out to you for coaching, or just to say thanks, or to not miss out on your endless stream of puns and jokes that we see from you on Facebook that you're becoming quite known for, where can they find you?
They can find, easiest way is either through Facebook or through email. It's very easy to find me on Facebook, John Newell, Newell. You can search for my sort of online handle that I use from time to time, which is AusLead John, which is AUS, short for Australia, LEAD, as in the part I sing, and John, JOHN, all as one word. Search for me there, contact me there, send me a message, friend me. It's all good. Social media is a wonderful way to keep up with everybody and to share all our ideas with each other.
All right, and we'll make sure all those links are in the show notes as well at goldmedalmoments.com for this episode. And John, thanks again. Hopefully we'll see you in Vegas and be able to catch up with you there. And thank you very much for being part of the show today.
Toby, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to leave you with one last thing about gold medal moments as well, and this is one of the things that I found as a coach, as a coach of singers and a coach of ensembles. For me, the gold medal moment that occurs almost weekly is the look on somebody's face when they have a little breakthrough. when the little light bulb goes on above their head, or when they discover a sound that they didn't think they could make. And they have that little breakthrough that says, wow, I can sing a little bit easier here and yet produce all this ring and resonance. That, to me, is the gold medal moment. I remember the feeling myself every time I had a breakthrough, or every time that I found a new way of doing something that worked better. And so seeing the same sort of reaction from an individual singer or from a group, that to me is a gold medal moment every single time. Because I remember what it was like. It was awesome. And then it's great to see other people experiencing that as well.
Well, you've certainly been a huge, I'm a lead singer as well, you've been a huge inspiration to myself and a lot of us out there, and I think I can speak for all of us when I say we can't wait to see you back up on that stage in a quartet when your life and family situation allows you to do that.
Toby, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, John. How cool to have John as my first guest on the show. Now, if you head over to the show notes at goldmedalmoments.com/John, you can find all the links to his social media, as well as info on where to pick up a copy of Let It Out. Now, we're also going to be giving away a copy of Let It Out to one of our listeners, and it's really easy to enter. All you have to do is head over to the Gold Medal Moments Facebook page, like us, and you'll get one entry. Now, if you share the post for the John Newell episode on your Facebook page, you'll get an extra 5 entries. We'll randomly select our winner on March 12th, and we'll announce the winner on the next show. So if you've already liked our Facebook page, you are already entered to win, but why not head on over there, share the link for this episode on your page, and pick up an extra 5 entries, and you're really helping spread the word about the show to all your barbershop friends. Now, if you'd like to support the podcast, and especially if you're heading to the Men's International in Vegas this summer, you can pick up our super cool Barbershop To-Do List t-shirt. You can find the links to all of that info on Facebook and at goldmedalmoments.com. Really helps out the show, and you're definitely going to want to be sporting one of these when you get to Vegas. Thanks again for joining me. Stay tuned. We have a lot of great guests lined up that are ready to tell their barbershop story. And please let us know what you think by commenting on Facebook, and give us a rating on iTunes, and also check in with us at goldmedalmoments.com. Thanks again, and until next week, go tell someone your barbershop story. Teach them a tag. Go sing something.
Love will give you such a big kick in the head.